It begins not with stone and mortar, not with blueprints or ambition, but with a gunshot in the dark. On the evening of December 8, 1980, a calm December night along Central Park West was split open by 5 rapid-fire bullets. Echoing off limestone and brick, freezing passers-by in place as the world watched in disbelief while John Lennon, one of the most influential voices of the 20th century, collapsed beneath the archway of the Dakota apartment building, bleeding out at the gate of what was meant to be one of the safest, most exclusive residences in New York City. In that moment, something larger than a life ended. A century-old illusion shattered. The fortress had been breached. The walls that promised privacy, protection, and permanence failed in the most public way imaginable. Yet this violent ending, as shocking as it was not separate from the building's origin. It was part of the same story. Because from the moment the Dakota was conceived, it was never simply a place to live. It was a statement carved in brick and sandstone, a social gamble financed by scandal, a structure designed to challenge power, taste, and tradition. Over time, it would become a magnet for ambition and artistry, secrecy and solitude, triumph and tragedy, absorbing the lives that passed through it until the building itself seemed to remember them. The Dakota forces a question that refuses to fade. Are buildings passive containers for history, or can they, through memory and repetition, become something else entirely? The origins of this Manhattan castle trace back not to architecture, but to chaos. Specifically, to the life of Isaac Merritt Singer. Born in 1811, Singer was a man driven by appetite and impulse, a failed actor with a mechanic's brilliance and little patience for restraint. In 1850, working in a Boston machine shop, he refined the sewing machine into something revolutionary. A device capable of continuous, curved stitching that transformed manufacturing, reshaped domestic labor, and helped fuel the industrial age. His invention changed the lives of millions, but the fortune it generated amplified his excesses rather than tempering them. Singer lived as extravagantly in his personal life as he did in business, maintaining multiple secret households across New York City, fathering more than 20 children with different women who were often unaware of one another's existence. The deception unraveled publicly in 1860, when 2 of his wives encountered him together on Fifth Avenue, triggering a scandal so sensational it dominated newspaper headlines and courtroom gossip. Accused of bigamy and moral corruption, Singer fled the United States in disgrace, escaping to England and leaving behind a company awash in money but drowning in controversy. What remained in America was a fortune without order, and into that vacuum stepped Edward Clark. Clark, born the same year as Singer, was his complete opposite. Where Singer was flamboyant and impulsive, Clark was methodical, disciplined, and precise. A lawyer by training, Clark understood systems, leverage, and patience. As the operational brain of the Singer Company, he introduced the installment payment plan, allowing families to purchase expensive sewing machines with small down payments and monthly installments. It was a quiet revolution, one that transformed consumer culture and generated unprecedented wealth. When Singer died in exile in 1875, Clark emerged not as a showman, but as a steward of an empire, controlling a fortune worth hundreds of millions in modern terms. By his mid-60s, Clark had achieved everything society promised wealth could deliver. And yet, instead of retreating into comfort, he made a decision that violated every social norm of Gilded Age New York. At the time, true status meant owning a private mansion on Fifth Avenue. Apartments were considered inferior, associated with immigrants, laborers, and overcrowded tenements downtown. The wealthy equated shared walls with social dilution. But Clark had observed something different abroad. In Paris and London, the elite lived communally in grand apartment houses that offered luxury without isolation, privacy without burden. Clark believed New York would follow. To many, the idea was heretical. To Clark, it was inevitable. He tested the concept cautiously, commissioning a young architect named Henry Hardenbergh to design the Van Corlear apartments. When the experiment succeeded, Clark escalated the risk dramatically. He purchased a vast, rocky tract of land on Manhattan's far western edge, overlooking the still new Central Park, an area so undeveloped and remote that critics mocked the project as Clark's folly, joking that it might as well be located in the Dakota territory. The insult became prophecy. The building would be called the Dakota. Clark gave Hardenbergh one instruction: spare no expense. What rose from the rocky soil by 1884 was unlike anything New York had seen. The Dakota did not resemble an apartment building. It resembled a fortress, a European stronghold transplanted into the American city. 8 stories of buff brick and sandstone rose behind a steeply pitched roof, punctuated by gables, chimneys, dormers, and ironwork. Its style defied classification, blending German Renaissance solidity, French chateau ornamentation, and Victorian excess into a structure that felt ancient the moment it was completed. But its true genius lay inward. A massive private courtyard sat hidden at the building's center, accessible only through a grand arched gateway on 72nd Street. Wide enough for horse-drawn carriages to enter without residents ever stepping onto the sidewalk. Privacy was engineered into every decision. Inside were 65 sprawling apartments, no two alike, some containing 20 rooms. 4 grand passenger elevators served residents, while an entirely separate hidden network of service elevators, staircases, corridors, and basements allowed servants, deliveries, coal, and laundry to move unseen. The building functioned as a self-contained world, a mansion multiplied, where wealth could exist without exposure. The gamble succeeded beyond expectation. By the 1890s, the Dakota was fully occupied and highly coveted. It attracted industrialists, financiers, railroad magnates, piano manufacturers, and professionals who possessed wealth but lacked old aristocratic blood. The building offered instant legitimacy. Thick walls muffled the city's noise. Guarded gates created psychological separation. And perhaps most importantly, the Dakota sold security, social, physical, and symbolic, at a time when New York was growing faster, louder, and more chaotic by the year. As the 20th century advanced, however, the building's identity subtly shifted. Its fortress-like quiet, once designed for the mercantile elite, began to attract artists, musicians, writers, and performers who valued isolation over spectacle. The Dakota became a refuge for creativity. Leonard Bernstein composed within its walls. Bacall, Roberta Flack, Carson McCullers, John Berryman, and countless others lived and worked in its shadowed rooms. They were drawn not only by privacy, but by atmosphere. The sense that time moved differently inside, that the modern world softened at the threshold. It was this promise of refuge that drew John Lennon and Yoko Ono to the Dakota in 1973. For Lennon, the building offered something fame had long denied him: anonymity with invisibility, safety without exile. For 7 years, he lived a quiet domestic life there, walking through the courtyard, greeting fans at the gate, believing, as so many before him had, that the building's walls were thick enough to keep chaos out. On December 8, 1980, that belief died with him. His murder at the Dakota's archway transformed the building instantly and permanently. The gateway designed to shield residents from the world became a global crime scene. The symbol of refuge became a symbol of vulnerability. The tragedy fused the Dakota's identity to loss in a way no renovation could erase. Today, the Dakota remains what it has always been: fiercely private, obsessively guarded, and profoundly exclusive. It is both a living residence and a public monument, a home and a pilgrimage site. Tour groups whisper about hauntings. Fans leave flowers by the gate. Residents pass silently through hallways heavy with memory. But the Dakota is not haunted by ghosts in the traditional sense. It is haunted by accumulation, by ambition layered upon ambition, by art layered upon art, by tragedy layered upon silence. It remembers Isaac Singer's chaos, Edward Clarke's defiance, Hardenbergh's vision, the artists who sought shelter, and the man who died at its door. It stands as proof that buildings do not merely house history. They absorb it, reflect it, and sometimes amplify it. The Dakota was built to keep the world out, yet it has spent more than a century drawing the world's gaze. In its shadowed corridors and guarded gates, it reminds us that permanence is an illusion. Privacy is fragile, and even the strongest walls cannot protect us from the stories that follow. It is not just a building, it is a witness, and it is never truly at rest. Today, buildings like the Dakota are no longer alone in carrying memory. Across the country, other architectural giants have followed a similar path. Structures born from ambition, wealth, and certainty, now living as witnesses to time. The Biltmore Estate stands as one such example. Once the private dream of extraordinary wealth, it survives today not as a residence of power, but as a carefully preserved monument. Visited, photographed, studied, and remembered. Its walls no longer protect a single family's future. They preserve a version of the past for millions who pass through its halls. Like the Dakota, the Biltmore reminds us that architecture does not freeze time, it carries it forward, reshaping meaning with every generation that arrives at its doors. And this is where our story pauses, not because history has ended, but because it continues everywhere around us. If places can remember, then every city is filled with silent witnesses waiting to be understood. If you found this story meaningful, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps keep these histories alive. And tell us in the comments, which building, place, or hidden story should we